22 here, Big 550 KTRS. Let's try and dive into a story in which I have fretted about talking about since it first came up. And it came up with John Diehl when he had to step down after reports of a sexting scandal with an intern. John Diehl was on the show once a week for a good 2 years. Now comes word, Virginia Young has a story that was posted last night about John Diehl, and it involves not only John Diehl, but it also involves a very dear friend of the Big 550 KTRS, and that name in this story is Brittany Burke. Brittany Burke, in terms of full disclosure, I don't like talking about this story at all because it's talking about friends of ours, and yet you sort of have to you have to talk about it in some way, shape, or form. But you also have to, I feel, at least tell you our biases in all of this, and that is one, John Diehl, I still consider a friend of the show, and Brittany Burke, who worked at KTRS Radio for years. She left KTRS and then worked for a union company in some capacity in PR, and then she started working for the governor's office. She still is and was a friend of the show all these years. She would come into the studio and offer us up guests and talk to us. And as a matter of fact, the John Beaver fundraiser we had, she went with me. She needed a ride, and so we went. We didn't go together, but we went and helped raise money for John Beaver, where we did the trivia night. So she's very, very, very much a part of our lives. Still very friendly and still a friend of ours. Then comes this story posted by Virginia Young, where there was some type of incident in Jefferson City back in April before the scandal with John Diehl came out that got him to resign and to step down from his office. And the story, according to Virginia Young in the Post, was that, before I back up a second, I don't know how much of this is a story.
Well,
right? I don't know how much of this is a story, and yet it's front page news. And so if that's the case, I have to talk about it. I have to talk about my friends in a way that is not very flattering. And I don't know what happened other than what's being reported in this story. But the story is that Brittany Burke was out in Jefferson City in which she woke up in a hotel room bruised and bloody. She calls the police and says, maybe something happened to me. I don't know. I can't remember. The police come to her room and they take a statement. Within this statement, according to the story in the newspaper, she alludes to a romantic relationship with John Diehl last year in which it's over. However, she does not allege that he did anything inappropriate that day. Actually, she never alleges he did anything inappropriate in the story. She wants to know, I blacked out last night. You need to check to see if something happened. So they end up doing a rape kit. They end up taking her statement. They ask John Diehl. They bring him in. He was very forthcoming and cooperative. He admits to the relationship. He said it was over. The story goes on to talk about some type of night where she had a couple of drinks, went to another bar, had a couple more drinks. Her tab was in excess of $100+ in a couple of different places. Ultimately, she wakes up not remembering exactly what happened, and a couple of other lobbyists and elected officials she runs into along the way. I don't know how much of a story that is. Let me also say this. The police ultimately decide there's not enough evidence for anything. The investigation is closed. They also tell Virginia Young that the witness, our friend Brittany Burke, stopped cooperating with police and therefore couldn't get any response from her. So if they have a reluctant witness and no information, they had no other option but to close the investigation. And once that closed, the police report is then open to the public. That's a pretty good and fair representation of the story. But I ask you, Kelly Jackson, lots of ways to go on this. I don't know if that's actually a story.
I tend to agree with you because, well, the headline says police report reveals past Diehl affair with Nixon staffer. That is all the story. That's
right.
I'm not even sure what the newsworthiness of that is. The story just shows a woman who went out, had a lot to drink that night.
Right.
And, things probably got a little out of hand when she jumped on the back of another a lobbyist. But
I mean, it's a story in that the former speaker, if he was Speaker of the House and had an affair, that's a story. But he's no longer Speaker of the House. He was Speaker of the House when this happened, or Speaker of the House in waiting. And so she was the governor's liaison to the legislature. So there's all sorts of interesting. I guess that's. I'm too close to make a independent judgment call on this. But somebody in the news brought up this, which is really interesting. So she was possibly a victim of a sexual assault. Possibly. She doesn't know. She says she blacked out in the story. She called the police. Please help me piece together. I had a blackout. I don't know what happened. So she's possibly a victim of a sexual assault. And yet her name was released by the police department.
Yes. We were talking about that. Yeah. And that's a very good point. And I'm kind of I'm uncomfortable with that if in fact, we won't know.
Right.
Because she's
right.
cut it off.
Right.
And the other thing that I think is interesting, it kind of uncovers a tiny bit, opens the curtain of how much partying they do in Jefferson City.
Well, what a cesspool Jefferson City is.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, no, there's no question, because it sounds like it almost plays like a House of Cards episode. But worse than that, it almost sounds like it's a college drinking night to remember or not to remember, in which I started here and then I met up with these people and I drank over there and then I went over here and I did this and then I ended up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was banging on someone's door. And I don't know how much of that is true. I don't know how much of that isn't true. But according to the story, if you are to believe the story, Jefferson City is a cesspool, and that Brittany Burke did not run into too many friends who were looking out for her best interest that night. Now, where she's wrong, where she's right, where she's innocent, I have no idea. I know that Brittany Burke was my friend. Brittany Burke will continue to be my friend. But it's just a couple of questions here. The veracity of the story, I don't know how much of a story it is. It's embarrassing. Embarrasses John Diehl again. Maybe he needs to be embarrassed. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But why did the police release her name?
Well, I think it really embarrasses her.
Right. No question about that. But again, if she's a possible victim of an assault, where's the protecting of the victim?
Absolutely.
And then on over all of that, your point in that Jefferson City is an absolute cesspool. A cesspool. And these people have the audacity to preach morals to the rest of us.
Right.
These people are telling us how to live our lives, and they go down there, and this is the game they play, and then they say morals, family values. Get over yourself, people. So it's front page story. Everyone's talking about it. I didn't want to talk about it only because of our connection to it. You have to talk about it, and I apologize if you don't like the way I'm talking about it, but you have to disclose that these people are friends of ours, and that I have a personal bias in this. And if you are disagreeing with what I'm saying, well, you're certainly free to do that, but at least understand that I have a personal vested interest in this story because these are friends of ours. So, and they're front page news. And so it's a very awkward position for us to be in, defending our friends and yet sort of reading the story. if that makes any sense.
Post-Dispatch, they get it right. They get it right most of the time.
Who knows? You can't, right. No one's questioning.
But I do question mixing the excessive drinking with her not knowing if she was sexually assaulted, using her name.
Right. 7:32 here, Big 550 KTRS. Friday's today. Sunday is Father's Day, and I have a suggestion for you, for Dad. First of all, watching the U.S. Open is a whole lot of fun with Joe Buck on TV. But how about a gift certificate to Menino's Market in Cottleville? That way, Dad can take the gift certificate, go to Menino's, and buy all the beef he wants. And then he can kick back and grill this weekend. Look, the rain is going to stop, and it is going to end up being a good weekend to get out on the back patio and grill. And no better food than